The morning I discovered what Raymond had been doing with my money, I was sitting in my daughter's favorite chair, holding a photograph of her, and I felt something shift inside my chest that I can only describe as the sound a floorboard makes when it finally gives way after years of being walked on too hard. My daughter's name was Cecilia, and she deserved better than everything that came after her. Let me tell you who I am first, because a man's history is the only honest introduction he can give. My name is Donald Archer. I am 67 years old. I spent 34 years working as a structural engineer for a mid-sized firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm not a man who wastes words or emotions. I was raised by a father who believed that discipline was a form of love, and I carried that belief into my own life, sometimes wisely, sometimes not. I have one regret that towers above all the others, and it is that I was not softer with Cecilia when she was young. I was not cruel, but I was distant in the way that men of my generation were taught to be distant, confusing emotional restraint with strength, and by the time I understood the difference, Cecilia was grown and gone and building her own life 3 states away in Atlanta. We repaired things, though, that matters to me. In the last 5 years of her life, we repaired things. She called me every Sunday, not because I asked her to, because she wanted to. We would talk for sometimes 2 hours about nothing and everything, about the book she was reading, about a restaurant she had tried, about her plans to eventually go back to school for landscape architecture, because she had always loved the way deliberate beauty could be built into the natural world. I looked forward to those calls more than I have ever admitted to anyone. They were the best part of my week. Cecilia was 34 when she died. An aneurysm, sudden, without warning, without any opportunity for goodbyes or last words or the kind of closure that people talk about as if it is something that actually exists. She was at work on a Tuesday afternoon, and then she was gone. My son-in-law Raymond called me from the hospital, and I could hear in his voice something that I interpreted at the time as devastation. I now understand it differently, but I am getting ahead of myself. Raymond DeWitt had been married to Cecilia for 6 years. He was 37, worked in logistics management, and had always struck me as a man who was very good at appearing to be more capable than he actually was. Cecilia loved him. That was enough for me. I kept my reservations, and I had them, quiet and persistent, locked in the part of myself where I stored things that were not mine to act on. My daughter was an intelligent woman. Her choices were her own. After Cecilia died, I watched Raymond carefully. He grieved publicly and thoroughly. At the funeral, he wept in a way that commanded the room. People kept going to him, wrapping their arms around him, telling him how sorry they were. I stood near the back for most of it, dry-eyed in the way that some men go dry-eyed when the grief is too large to exit through their eyes. My brother Carl stood next to me the whole time and didn't say a word, which was the greatest kindness anyone showed me that week. 3 months after the funeral, Raymond called me. He explained that without Cecilia's income, things were tight. He was not asking for charity, he said. He just wanted me to know the situation. He used the word transparency twice in the same conversation, which I noted but did not comment on. He told me that he was struggling to keep up with the mortgage on the house he and Cecilia had shared, that his own income covered most of it, but that the margin was thin, and that any support I could offer temporarily would mean a great deal. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for 4 days. I thought about the fact that Raymond had been my daughter's husband and that she had loved him. I thought about the fact that the house he was trying to keep was the house where my daughter had lived, where her things still were, where I had visited and sat at her kitchen table and drunk coffee and heard her laugh bounce off the walls. There was something in me that could not bear the thought of that house being lost. It felt like losing her again. I called Raymond back and told him I would send $750 a month. I was not wealthy. I was comfortable, retired with a pension, modest savings, a paid-off home of my own. $750 a month was not nothing for me. It was a real commitment, but I made it without hesitation and without conditions, because in some part of my mind I had convinced myself that I was not helping Raymond. I was protecting something of Cecilia's. That was my first mistake, conflating a place with a person. The payments went out like clockwork. First of every month, transferred directly to Raymond's account. He texted me a thank you the first few times, then emails, and then eventually just a thumbs-up emoji, which I found irritating but did not address. I told myself he was busy. I told myself grief changes people's communication habits. I gave him every benefit of every doubt because the alternative, acknowledging what I was beginning to suspect, was something I was not ready to face. It was my brother Carl who first said it plainly. Carl is 3 years younger than me and has always been the kind of man who says what he sees without ceremony. We were having dinner at my house 14 months into the payments when he set down his fork and looked at me and said, "Don, have you actually looked at what Raymond's been doing with his life lately?" I told Carl I didn't keep tabs on my son-in-law. Carl pulled out his phone and showed me Raymond's social media profile. I'm not a man who uses social media. I find it performative and exhausting, so I had not seen what Carl was showing me. I had not seen the photographs of Raymond at a resort in Cancun 4 months after Cecilia died. I had not seen the photographs of a woman named Simone, who appeared in his posts with increasing frequency and increasing intimacy over the following months. I had not seen the post from 2 weeks prior showing Raymond and Simone at what appeared to be a wine-tasting event, both of them laughing, her hand resting on his chest in the easy, proprietary way that a woman touches a man she has been with long enough to stop thinking about it. I looked at those photographs for a long time. Carl didn't say anything, he just let me look. I am not naive enough to believe that a widower should never find happiness again. Cecilia would not have wanted Raymond to be miserable forever. I understood that. What I felt sitting at that dinner table was not jealousy on her behalf or moral outrage about him moving on. What I felt was something colder and more specific. I felt the particular anger of a man who realizes he has been managed. I started paying attention. I reached out to a former colleague of mine named Pete Garrison, who had left engineering to work in financial consulting and who owed me a favor of the professional variety. I asked Pete, quietly, if he could help me get a clearer picture of Raymond's financial situation without doing anything illegal. Pete knew people who knew how to find publicly available information and compile it efficiently. Within 3 weeks, I had a document on my kitchen table that answered a number of questions I had been avoiding. Raymond's logistics management job paid him $89,000 a year. The mortgage on the house he and Cecilia had shared was $1,600 a month, well within his salary, even alone, particularly without the lifestyle expenses of a spouse and any children. The house had also appreciated significantly in value since they'd purchased it, meaning Raymond was sitting on substantial equity. Raymond was not struggling. Raymond had told me he was struggling, and I had believed him, and for 22 months, I had sent him $750 every single month, a total of $16,500, and he had taken every dollar of it and spent it on resort vacations and wine tastings and a life that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with comfort. I sat with that information for 2 days. I did not call Raymond. I did not send an angry text. I did not call Carl, though I knew Carl would want to know. I sat in Cecilia's chair. I had taken it from the house after she died, one of the few things Raymond had offered me, and I held the photograph of her that I keep on my side table, and I talked to her the way I have talked to her every day since she left. I told her I was sorry it took me this long to see it. I told her that I didn't think she had known who he really was. I believed that fully. My daughter was sharp and loving and would never have stayed with a man she knew was this hollow. She had simply loved someone who was better at being lovable than he was at being good. On the 3rd day, I called Raymond. He answered with the same pleasant, measured voice he always used with me. We exchanged small talk for approximately 90 seconds. He asked about my health. I told him I was fine, and then I told him I had been reviewing my finances and that I was going to be discontinuing the monthly payments effective immediately. There was a pause. Then Raymond said, very carefully, that he understood times could be tough and that he hoped things would stabilize for me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't express gratitude for 22 months of support. He simply accepted the framing I had given him, that I was the one with financial difficulties, because it was easier for him than any conversation that required honesty. I said, "Take care of yourself, Raymond." I hung up. I called my attorney the following morning and had a letter drafted and sent to Raymond's address, formally documenting that the voluntary financial support I had been providing had been made without any legal obligation and was now ceased permanently. My attorney told me there was no legal claim Raymond could make against me. I already knew that. The letter was not about legal protection. The letter was about making something real and documented and final, because I am a structural engineer by training, and I understand that the most important part of any structure is knowing exactly where it ends. I took the $750 I would have sent that month, and I donated it to a scholarship fund at the Landscape Architecture Department of a university in Charlotte. I did it in Cecilia's name. I will keep doing it every month for as long as I am able. I don't know what Raymond told Simone about why the extra money stopped coming. I don't know if he told her about me at all. I don't think about Raymond very much. What I think about, when the evenings get quiet and I sit in her chair and the house settles around me the way old houses do, is my daughter. I think about her voice on Sunday mornings. I think about the landscape architecture degree she never got to pursue and the gardens she never got to design. I think about how love, when it is real and when it is late in coming, deserves to be protected fiercely, not just while the person is living, but long after. That is what I am doing. That is all I have ever been doing.